Hello, I'm Zina, and this is me doing the BookTube Newbie Tag. I thought, what better way to start a BookTube channel and try to get the initial awkwardness out than do something with set questions where I don't have to think about what on earth to talk about by myself. So, first question. Why did you start this channel? Well, I've been a BookTube consumer and sometimes commenter for, well, something over 2 years. I'm not 100% sure, but I think I found it at the end of 2018. And basically almost from the beginning, probably after a few months of watching, I really wanted to take part in this more, but I was too nervous really and too shy, and I guess I still am. But yeah, so why did I start? I do really like engaging with the community. I already do that as a commenter, but maybe not as regularly as I would like sometimes. But the few times that I have, I've had a lovely time, doing buddy reads, sometimes chatting about all sorts of other things, and I think by making my own videos, I'm hoping that maybe I can actually engage more, maybe meet a few more people, because I'm out there with my face instead of just some random name without even a profile picture. For some reason I've never put one up before. Yeah, so that's the reason. Number two, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to BookTube? Well, me, I'm not very fun, to be honest. Yeah, I think this is the question that everybody struggles with, isn't it? Whatever, I can, I guess, bring my own thoughts into it. Whether they are unique remains to be seen. Sorry, I have nothing better for this. Number three, what are you most excited about for this new channel? Well, I guess I touched upon it already. I think most excited about engaging with other bookish people, because I don't have that many of that in my life. Yeah, well, I do have very few. But actually we tend to not even read the same stuff. Well, there's some overlap, but yeah, it's clearly not enough for my taste, which is why I spend way too much time on BookTube. So yeah, that's what I'm most excited about, to engage with more people, hear about exciting stuff, and also possibly I wonder whether it will change the way I read. Whether I might end up having better recall about certain things I read, because I might be reading them with a different focus if I know that I will be talking about it. I'm not sure, but that may be something to be excited about if it happens. Number four, why do you love reading? It's difficult to say. I've always loved reading. I don't think there's ever been a time when I didn't. So I guess there are several reasons. One is obviously that it's lovely, and it's a lovely escapist hobby to have. You can, either dive into all sorts of fantasy worlds or into the minds of other people from, different times, different places, and so on, even if they are indeed, imaginary. Then I do also like the challenge. I like escapist fantasy and stuff like that, but I also very much like to feel challenged, to have my mind stretched to an extent, feeling that I'm learning something or gaining a new appreciation for something. Obviously then information, if we're talking non-fiction. And lastly, I do just really love language generally. So sometimes even if I don't really follow plot, I can still very much enjoy the beauty of a well-written sentence. So that's another joy, I guess, of reading. Okay, I think that's enough. Question number 5. What book or series got you into reading? Again, not too easy to answer because I grew up with my dad reading to me basically nearly every day. And so obviously that was not me reading actively. So this happened before I knew how to read. And I basically could not wait to learn how to read because I loved all the stories he read to me, but I wanted to be independent, you know, I wanted to open a book and do it myself. But I wasn't, you know, I wasn't one of those precocious children who like taught it to themselves, you know. I did at some point pretend to know how to read, I think, as a 4-year-old, by basically memorizing a short picture book and then going from picture to picture and basically narrating the story that I'd learned by heart. But I didn't actually know how to read at the time. I think I'd obviously made the connection between the signs on the page and that they meant words, but I didn't know how to read. So as soon as I could read, you know, as soon as I entered, you know, primary school and learned how to read, I was reading non-stop. So back in the day, I guess, what would be the stories that I was reading? I think a lot of Erich Kästner. He's quite famous German children's author. He also wrote for adults, but I think he's more famous for the children's books. And Ende, who wrote The Never-Ending Story, which I think is the most famous one generally and certainly outside of Germany. Otfried Preußler. And then I guess we can also then add the cliche, because I do remember having a slight slump in my young reading life between the ages of 8 and 10 or so, where I'd still read, but I didn't read as much, and I was basically glued to the telly. And then I discovered Harry Potter. There was only one book out, and I had this lovely bookshop employee who I think she must have actually specialized in the children's lit section, and she recommended it to me. This was kind of before the buzz happened. I think the real hype started around book 3, and it really helped that he was the same age as me, and I had to literally wait a year to get the next one and the next one and the next one. So I was kind of growing up with him alongside, until of course it took longer for J.K. Rowling to actually finish the books, and then that's also when I stopped being as obsessed with it. I still liked it, but I don't think I was ever that sort of massive fan, but it definitely got me into reading, because once I finished the first one, I was so hooked on reading, and obviously there was no other Harry Potter book to read, so I had to go and find other ones to entertain myself. So I guess that would be a cliched answer for anybody from my generation, but yeah, but I did read before. I just wouldn't know which series. Oh, Enid Blyton was also a firm favourite, and Astrid Lindgren. Yeah, that was a very long answer. Cool. 6. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? How to get over the hurdle of crippling self-doubt. You know, that would be the one. And then maybe the other one might be time management, yeah. And also, did these people, you know, my favourite, there's a lot of them, but most of them, one of their qualities is that they are very, very eloquent, and they seem to have a sort of natural grasp of how to speak about themes and topics that are examined in books, and a level that to me seems like something that shouldn't come that naturally. Maybe I'm just being a bit dumb, but I'm sometimes in awe at how people can speak about these things so fluently, and I wonder whether that is something, a skill that they honed, or whether they've always sort of been talented at it. And basically, I guess the question is, can I actually get better at this? That would be lovely. Yeah, that's that. Number 7. What challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? I think I must have missed out a word there when I was writing them down, but you know what I mean. What are the hardest challenges? Well, as most people answer, probably time management, trying to actually stick to uploading a video on a regular basis, whatever interval that may be. That is one, and the other one is clearly my awkwardness, the self-doubt, you know, and the awkwardness to put something on the internet and speaking to a camera. Although I'm quite good at talking to myself, I do that all the time, so this should really not be terribly different, but it is. Okay, number 8. When did you start reading? Well, I guess I already answered that, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's another challenge, to stay on track, to not ramble off. But yeah, when do you start reading? Well, yeah, as soon as I could. Basically, like I said, wasn't precocious, didn't teach myself, but I did literally, like, as soon as I started primary school and we started learning the alphabet, I was all over it, and I was, as soon as I learned, I basically read everything. I read, you know, the cereal box, I read signs, you know, from shop fronts and stuff that we were walking past. I read everything because I was so happy that I could finally decipher these signs. I think I must have been very annoying in the car. Sure. Yeah, which also led to me accidentally reading a newspaper article that really was not made for 6-year-old eyes. It was about a murder case where a mother had murdered her children. I remember very clearly, very vividly, that my mother saw me eyeing up the newspaper and she snatched it away and said, "No, this is not something for you." And of course, later on, I snuck back and read the story, and then I broke into tears. Yeah, I guess that taught me. No, it didn't teach me. I still read stuff that wasn't meant for my eyes. Yeah, so that's when I started. Number 9, where do you read? The typical things: on my sofa, in bed, on the train, buses, etc., public transport, traveling. Also, sometimes whilst walking, if I really can't, like, tear myself away from the book, although I tend to only do that on ways that I know, and I do stop reading when I'm trying to cross a street and stuff like that, right, and sort of glance up a couple of times. So that, I love reading on the beach, on my balcony in nice weather, in queues, waiting rooms, basically anywhere that you can somehow sneak in a minute or two. Although I will say, of course, I think I'd obviously much more enjoy reading, you know, sitting down when I have an hour to myself or something like that. That's the ideal situation. I would very much love to have a reading nook with, like, you know, a very lovely, cozy, and comfortable armchair and stuff, but that is a thing for the future. I do not have the room for that right now. Yeah. And the last question: what kind of books do you like to read? Looking at my shelves, probably a lot of contemporary and so-called literary fiction, which is a term I only learned on BookTube. But also a lot of, I do very much enjoy historical fiction, some fantasy. I haven't read so much sci-fi, but I do want to get into that more. I guess I do very much enjoy a bit of experimental fiction to an extent. Unless I feel like everything's going over my head, then maybe not, but I do enjoy that. Yeah, a little bit of poetry, but not as much as I would like, not as much as I used to read. Some classics. Yeah, I think that's about it. There's a few genres that I tend not to read as much, or at all, really. Romance, is one of them, although I've tried to in January. But I don't think it's gonna become my genre. I could see myself reading the odd one in between, but I don't think it's gonna be. It doesn't have the appeal. And then also horror and thriller. I read one thriller once and it was absolute rubbish. And I know that is obviously a terrible thing to do, to read one and then dismiss the whole genre, which is not what I'm doing. But I do think they make me feel a type of tension that I don't find pleasant, and I do not find it worth my while to put myself in that position. And then mysteries have just not really, mostly never appealed to me. And horror, that depends on the definition. I had a Stephen King phase, but that's over. And then I read House of Leaves and very much enjoyed it, but I never would have classified it as horror. I only learned that some people put it in that category when I went on to BookTube and found some reviews of it. I would never have put it there. But I guess if the definition is that broad, then maybe I do read horror, but not a lot. Yeah, so this is a very roundabout way of saying I read a lot of contemporary, historical and fantasy fiction. With a few bits here and there that are different. Yeah. Well, so that is it. I am still very awkward. Thank you very much for watching if you made it to the end. I would love to hear from you, and let's hope that I can keep this up and learn how to edit this stuff and continue to post videos. Bye!